Hello, what's up everybody? Welcome back to Citizen Scientist, a channel and community made and developed specifically for you, for curious, open-minded individuals who are ready to become their own expert. And there's no better way to do that than reading a non-fiction book. Now, what do I mean by reading non-fiction book? This means autobiographies, biographies, scientific history, and self-help books. I think are some of the top 4 that we should really look at. And before I break into how to effectively read a non-fiction piece of literature, some of my favorite things to do, I wanted to first try and illustrate why it is so important to read non-fiction books. And I think there's 2 great examples to go about that. First, let's say you are going to work out every day at the gym and you go by yourself. You'll probably do fairly decent. You'll make mistakes and blunders and you'll lift wrong. You might even injure yourself. But let's say the alternative is you went to the gym every day and Arnold Schwarzenegger was waiting for you every day to be your personal trainer. In both those situations, what do you think is going to benefit you most? Having Arnold Schwarzenegger as a personal trainer telling you what to eat, when to sleep, how to lift, when to lift, or trying to figure it out all on yourself. And that's what nonfiction books are. That's what these are for your brain, okay? These are your Arnold Schwarzenegger for your brain, okay? Because the reason is you are not the first 20-something-year-old. You're not the first 30 or 40 or 50-something-year-old, okay? You're about the 100th generation of person that is your age. Which means that there's been other people that have existed and lived and gone through life and gone through the mental conundrums that you're currently facing. So why go through it by yourself and make the same mistakes that they did when you can just pick up a 300-page book, which is what they average, 300 pages on average, and read it and figure out what not to do and what to do and expedite that learning. The best way I like to put it is like going through a hallway. It can otherwise be dark. And if it's dark, that's not reading a book, okay? You're going to bump into side tables, you're going to stub your toe, you're going to be feeling around, not knowing where you're going. Or you can read a nonfiction book and turn the light switches on. How much faster you'll be able to go down that hallway? How you're going to be able to dodge all the clutter and all the things out there. So that's why it's so important. Another great example is think about all the great men and women that have existed. How many people right now could you think of just the top of your head that have passed away and are no longer here that you would love to have 1-2-hour conversation with on how they did it? Like, just some that I could think of is Thomas Edison, Nikola Tesla, right? Some of these great minds. Well, guess what? You can. Most of these people write books. They write them sometimes on their deathbed, and that's what these can offer you. So, for those of you who are just starting, who don't know how to find a good book, this is what I recommend. Step 1, find a podcast or a YouTube channel that you enjoy listening to, that has interest you, whatever that interest is, listen to that, and listen to what the host says or the guest says. If they recommend any books, go ahead and buy that book and give it a try. The best thing you can do is give it a try. And the great news is it's 2021. You can literally go on Amazon and all these books, every single one of these books, these ones up top here, literally all average between $10 and $30. They are cheap. They are dirt cheap to have the keys to all the knowledge. It's unbelievable. And it'll be on your doorstep in 2 days. Highly recommend it. All right. Now, the third thing you're going to want to do is you're going to want to find some highlighters if you like to highlight, and obviously a pen or pencil to annotate and take notes. And we're going to dive in to show you kind of how I go about it, and hopefully it'll help you out. All right, so now that we got our pen and highlighter, I don't use a highlighter, I like to use a pen, but we're gonna use these 3 books to kind of break down as an example. They're one of my favorite books. So what I usually like to do for every book, the first thing I like to do is I wanna open it up and I wanna find that publishing copyright date. This is important, especially when you're reading nonfiction, because you wanna know when it was published. We live in a world where everything is changing and we're learning so much. So you want to know, especially when it comes to science, because it's ever changing, that you are circling the publishing date so that you know when you got the information. So the next time that you look back on it, you know when it was published. The second thing I like to do, as you can see, I have tons of written words in these books. that is a huge part of reading nonfiction books. What I like to recommend for these is a couple things. One, I will always make a top column. Usually I will title it with a Q for quotes. These books, these men and women that write these books have decades worth of knowledge where they are able to draw on 10, 20, 30 years of experience, and they can synthesize complex feelings and emotions and examples that they can simplify into just one sentence or two sentences. And I like to keep these in my back pocket so that when they articulate something that I truly agree with, I can go back and look at that phrase and I can memorize it and use it in my everyday vernacular. This is part of leveling up. This is part of getting your point across, because every day in communication with other people, what are we learning more and more? Our attention spans are dropping like fire, okay? They are dropping exponentially. And so the ability to be able to communicate your idea or your feelings or your emotions or your opinion in the shortest context that makes the most sense is almost a superpower now. So I always make a quote tab up here. So I can go to any of these pages, and on that page there'll be a Q. So for example, we can go to page 20 just to check it out. And we'll go to it, and you can see I have a Q right there with a star. There I have a Q, and so we can read this one right here. You know who's paying for that? Our heart is. Wow, incredible. And so I like to keep these quotes. The second thing is, if you're reading a scientific book that has studies in it, I always make a study or a proof section. That way, when I tell my friends or family something and they don't agree with me, I can go back to the book and I can find the exact study that's referenced so that they're not just listening to me, so that they are listening to an actual published, verified study. Here you can see I have more studies here. So that is important, especially when you're reading nonfiction books. And lastly, I create my own table of contents. As you can see, I make my own numbers pages, and I like to put what I find important on that page. So here we have a hangover cure, how to do his actual breathing method, how to suppress inflammation. And so that is a powerful thing, because the normal table of contents, if we can go to an example, just has the chapters. And sometimes they'll break it down. But for the most part, you know, they don't have every page. So if you find something really important on, let's say, page 52 here, 53, you know, it doesn't have anything listed, and you're going to want to find that. So I make my own table of contents for things that I find important. Well, and lastly is things that pertain to you. So I have an autoimmune disease called psoriasis. So I made a separate section over here that has anything to do with autoimmune diseases, or even psoriasis specifically. I make a separate case, because when I come back to this book, there's specific things. This is the Wim Hof method, how to do his meditation and breathing. These are all specific to just that. These all have their labels. These are quotes that I think are beautiful to use in everyday conversation, and these are scientific studies. And this is why you want to annotate your book. You want to abuse your book, because remember, books are not one-time reads, okay? Books are ongoing communications. Many times throughout these books, I'll even write the date of when I read it, so that when I come back to this book 2 years from now, I can say, oh, wow, look, I wrote this 2 years ago. Have I implemented this into my life? Have I changed anything? How has this affected my life? Am I not using this? And so that's how I like to read nonfiction books. It's an ongoing conversation. I can always open these back up and reference them and be able to find the exact information that I was looking for, so I can continue to relearn, regrow my neurocircuits and my neural pathways, because neurons that fire together wire together, and learning is creating new synaptic connections, and remembering is maintaining those connections. So I hope this helped you guys out. If you haven't, subscribe, and leave some, if this helped you out, if you have any questions, leave them in the comments. I would be happy to help you guys.